Introduction.
The story of America doesn't start with fireworks and apple pie. It begins with desperation, disease, and a mad scramble for land, gold, and glory. Between 1528 and 1620, three European superpowers of Spain, France, and England clawed their way into the so-called New World, each with their flavor of conquest, trade, and accidental genocide. They didn't come for sightseeing. These were men driven by greed, religious zeal, and reckless ambition that makes history books worth reading. If you want a clean-cut narrative about noble explorers and benevolent settlers, you might want to look elsewhere. The birth of the Americas was not a sanitized fairy tale. It was a brutal and bloody mess, a fever dream of conquest and survival that set the stage for everything we call civilization today. First up, the Spanish. No one did conquest quite like them. They didn't just dip their toes in the water. They went in head first, armor gleaming, swords drawn, ready to baptize the natives in steel and smallpox. Case in point, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, whose last name means head of a cow. He washed up on the shores of modern-day Texas in 1528 after a failed expedition, looking less like a conquistador and more like a shipwrecked lunatic. For 8 years, he wandered through indigenous territories, surviving starvation, enslavement, and the kind of psychedelic journey that would make Hunter S. Thompson proud. By the time he staggered back to Spanish-controlled Mexico, he was less a conqueror and more a spiritual guru, raving about mystical cures and the interconnectedness of humanity. The Spanish crown nodded politely, ignored his philosophical ramblings, and returned to what they did best, which was pillaging. Through the encomienda system, they turned entire native populations into a workforce, mining silver, farming crops, and dying en masse. It was brutal and it was unfortunately effective. The Spanish model of exploitation built empires even as it destroyed civilizations. While the Spanish were busy building golden cities on the backs of indigenous corpses, the French took a different approach. They weren't here to conquer, they were here to trade. Beavers specifically. Yes, while Spain lusted after gold, the French lusted after rodents. Guys like Samuel de Champlain and Jacques Cartier rolled into Canada, shook hands with the locals, and said, "Hey, let's make some deals." Instead of cutting down entire villages, they traded shiny trinkets for furs, forming alliances with indigenous tribes and inadvertently setting off a series of intertribal wars that would reshape the continent. It was capitalism in its earliest, purest form. Chaotic, unpredictable, and profitable. The French got their furs. The natives got guns. Everybody has diseases. Progress. But despite their seemingly friendly approach, the French couldn't escape the inevitable truth of colonization. Even the best-intentioned interactions append entire ways of life. The fur trade created wealth, but it also sparked violence, displaced indigenous communities, and planted the seeds of future conflicts. No European power could enter the continent without leaving behind a trail of unintended consequences. This is a crucial aspect of history that often gets overlooked in traditional narratives of exploration and conquest. Then there was the English, stumbling onto the scene like the guy late to the party, already half drunk and picking fights. Their first attempt at colonization with the colony of Roanoke quickly disappeared. Not exactly a promising start. But in 1607, they tried again with Jamestown, Virginia, a mosquito-infested death trap that nearly wiped out its settlers in the first few years. Imagine a group of English gentlemen, utterly unprepared for life without servants, starving to death while stubbornly refusing to farm. They spent more time searching for non-existent gold than planting food. At one point, they resorted to eating their horses, then their dogs, then their shoes, then allegedly each other. And yet, they survived. Because survival is what humans do. Jamestown wasn't just a random colony. It was the petri dish for American resilience, capitalism, and manifest destiny. Through sheer force of will, and let's be honest, some aggressive land grabbing, the English carved out a foothold in the New World, establishing a society that would eventually become the blueprint for the United States. They brought the concepts of private property, individual liberty, and democratic governance, ideas that would later form the backbone of American ideology. But they also brought enslavement, displacement, and a level of arrogance that would make future generations question whether progress and morality were ever genuinely compatible. Then there's the Columbian Exchange, the chaotic, world-altering swap meet between the old and new worlds. This was not just a simple exchange of goods. It was a transformative event that reshaped global economies and permanently altered human history. Picture a 16th century flea market where Europe, Africa, and the Americas threw everything they had onto the table. Things like food, animals, weapons, and death. The results, where Europe got corn, potatoes, tomatoes, chocolate, and tobacco. Their diets improved, their populations boomed, and suddenly everyone was addicted to nicotine. The Americas got horses, cows, pigs, wheat. And, oh yeah, smallpox, measles, and influenza, which wiped out up to 90% of the indigenous population. Africa got guns and manufactured goods. In return, European traders ramped up the transatlantic slave trade, leading to centuries of human trafficking that would shape the future of the Americas. It was a brutal but transformative exchange, fueling global economies' rise and permanently altering human history. Some historians see it as progress, others see it as devastation. The truth is that it is both. That's the thing with history. It's never just one thing. So, what's the takeaway from all this bloodshed and upheaval? History is messy, violent, and complicated. The European conquest of the Americas wasn't a story of heroes and villains. It was a raw and unfiltered struggle for power, wealth, and survival. The Spanish left behind a legacy of empire building and cultural fusion. The French played the role of traders, dealmakers, and opportunists, forever altering indigenous societies. Despite their staggering incompetence, the English laid the groundwork for a new nation built on individualism, capitalism, and the pursuit of self-determination. And here we are today still grappling with the consequences. The world we live in, our economies, our governments, our social structures, was born in this era of chaos and conquest.
You've been listening to a portion of the RPTM Podcast. We hope we made you laugh, but more importantly, we hope we made you cry. If you found this episode engaging, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on our upcoming thought-provoking discussions.